She just wanted to escape from an arranged marriage. But when she decided to spend the night with a stranger to ruin her reputation, she never imagined that man was so much more than he appeared. What if, to find true love, you first had to lose everything they told you was right? This story will make you laugh, sigh, question, and above all, feel. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? Your like helps this channel grow and continue bringing emotional stories like this one. Share with someone special. Emily Carter always believed the ocean had a voice. Not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind that stirs something deep inside your chest, a language made of rhythm and pull, salt and silence. And in that silence, she found the only place where she didn't need to pretend. Every morning before the first tour of the day, Emily would walk barefoot along the shore of Ocean View Bay. The sand, cool and damp beneath her feet, clung to her skin like the worries she couldn't shake. She would whisper her fears to the sea, not expecting answers, just relief. At 27, Emily had built a life that many admired, even if they didn't understand it. Her wind-blown hair rarely behaved, her fingernails always carried traces of the coastline, and her laugh came easily, like the splash of a tide against rocks. She was a local guide, a free spirit, a woman who preferred stories to jewelry and sunsets to spreadsheets, but even the ocean couldn't drown out the voice of her mother. Linda Carter had a different vision for her only daughter, one built on security, legacy, and well-timed arrangements. Their family business, Carter Coastal Tours, was sinking fast. Years of economic strain, tourism dips, and poor investments had chipped away at what was once a proud, family-run enterprise. And Linda had found a solution, or rather a savior, Bradley Whitmore, heir to one of the most influential families on the coast. Handsome in that perfectly tailored, too polished kind of way. With his custom yacht, sparkling smile, and an ego big enough to rival the Pacific, he was considered a catch by everyone who cared about status. To Emily, however, he was everything wrong with expectations. He didn't care about the tide or the people who lived by it. He only cared about appearances, about legacy, control, power. He spoke of Emily like she was a new property on the market, the perfect coastal bride. Beautiful, local, well-liked, perfect PR. He had said that out loud once. Emily almost threw her drink in his face. But Linda had other plans. She reminded Emily daily of what this union could fix. He can save the business, Em. Do you know how many tour companies he owns shares in? And he likes you. He really does. He doesn't know me, Emily replied, her voice cold. He knows what I represent, Linda softened, as mothers do when desperation meets guilt. Maybe, but that's something, and something is more than what we have right now. Emily stared at her mother that night, seeing not the sharp woman who once ran the company with fierce pride, but a woman worn down by fear and compromise. And part of her heart cracked. She didn't want to see her mother lose everything, but losing herself didn't seem like a fair trade. Still, the town had already decided. Whispers filled the air like sea mist. The bakery offered free samples for the bride-to-be. The florist suggested coral peonies for the bouquet. The tailor, unprompted, offered to let out her grandmother's wedding dress. It was suffocating. Worse yet, Bradley was making plans. He had already spoken to photographers. The engagement yacht party had a tentative guest list, and he spoke to her with that ownership in his tone, as if she was already his, as if she had no say, and maybe she didn't. The business was months away from shutting down. Her mother had started selling jewelry to make payroll. Emily couldn't ignore the truth. Her freedom came with a price tag, but something inside her, that wild, salt-soaked part that had danced barefoot in storms and kissed strangers on Ferris wheels, that part wasn't going quietly, not without one last fight. That night, Emily stood on the wraparound porch of their creaky coastal home, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself. The stars were smeared across the sky like paint, and the ocean breathed in the distance, patient and ancient. She thought about all the things she would lose if she said yes, her freedom, her joy, her voice. Then she had a thought, strange, Reckless and almost laughable. What if she ruined it? What if she shattered the perfect image Bradley needed? He was obsessed with perfection, with appearances, with class. If Emily could make herself seem inappropriate, undesirable, wild, maybe he'd back off. Maybe he'd drop her the way he'd drop a tarnished trophy. It would be scandalous. Her reputation might not survive it, but she might. That idea took root, growing like seaweed under the surface. She needed something big, something public, something that would stain her record, but not her soul, and it had to happen soon. As she leaned against the porch rail, feeling the salt in the air kiss her skin, Emily closed her eyes and made a silent vow she would take her life back, even if it meant lighting a fire no one could put out. The only question was, how far was she willing to go, and who would help her strike the match? It started with tequila, not much, just a shot, maybe two. Enough to quiet the noise in Emily's head, enough to make the sky spin just slightly and the laughter of tourists blend into music. She wasn't the type to drink on the job, of course, but that night she wasn't working. She wasn't anything, really. Just a woman stuck between duty and desire, dressed in denim shorts, flip-flops, and a silent scream she couldn't quite let out. The beach bonfire was a weekly event. Locals mingled with visitors. People shared blankets, stories, and s'mores. The air smelled of roasted marshmallows and sea salt, and the flames danced like they knew secrets they'd never tell. Emily sat on a driftwood log, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the fire. Her best friend, Lucy, nudged her with a grin and handed her another plastic cup. "You've got that face," Lucy said, sipping her drink. "What face?" "The one that says, 'I'm about to do something unhinged and you can't stop me.'" Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out toward the water. Dark, infinite, and oddly comforting. "I think I'm going to ruin my life," she whispered. Lucy blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I mean, on purpose." That got her friend's full attention. Emily explained it all in a low, hurried voice. The pressure, the expectations, the suffocating sense that everyone had already planned her wedding, her life, and maybe even the color of her future curtains. And then the idea, wild, irresponsible, but thrilling. "I need to make myself unfit," she said. "Unworthy of Bradley. The perfect trophy with a cracked base." Lucy nearly choked on her drink. "You want to create a scandal?" "I want out." The word felt too small for the weight it carried, but it was true. She wanted out of the golden cage before the door locked shut. Lucy sat back, nodding slowly. "All right. What's the plan?" "Drunken karaoke, moonlight streaking, fake a criminal record. I'm thinking—" Emily paused, eyes narrowing with playful mischief. "I'm thinking I spend the night with a stranger." Lucy's jaw dropped. "Not actually spend the night," Emily clarified. "Just make it look like I did. Enough to get the town talking. Enough to make Bradley's perfect narrative fall apart." There was silence between them, broken only by the sound of waves lapping the shore and someone strumming a ukulele in the distance. "That's insane," Lucy finally said. "I know. I love it." They burst into laughter, and for a moment, it felt like being 17 again, plotting mischief under the stars. But this time the stakes were real. Emily stood up, dusting off her shorts. Her heart raced in her chest like a hummingbird caught in a jar. She was really going to do this. She was going to find someone, a stranger, and ask him to be her. Fake scandal. She wandered away from the firelight, walking toward the stretch of beach where fewer people lingered. The moon was a silver coin hanging low in the sky, casting soft shadows across the sand. That's when she saw him, a silhouette near the shore. Tall, lean, shirtless, wearing faded board shorts. He was kneeling by a surfboard, adjusting a cracked fin with steady hands. His hair was messy from salt water, and the glow of the moon caught on his damp skin. He looked normal, real. Not polished like Bradley, not calculating like the men her mother introduced at charity galas. Just a guy, quiet, focused, alone. Emily took a deep breath and walked toward him. "Hey," she called out. He looked up, startled, then smiled politely. "Evening. Fixing your board?" "Trying. The ocean bit back today." She laughed, standing a few feet away. "Do you always surf at night?" Only when I need answers. That line hit her harder than it should have. What's your name? She asked. Jake, he said, brushing hair out of his eyes. Jake Donovan. Emily. Hesitated. I'm Emily. Nice to meet you, Emily. There was a pause. The kind of silence that isn't awkward, just open. She almost backed out, almost told him to forget it, but instead she took a step closer and said something that shocked, even herself. Would you be willing to pretend we spent the night together? Jake blinked. I'm sorry, what? I just need people to think we did. Nothing happened, of course. Nothing needs to. I need to ruin a reputation I never asked for. He stared at her, brow furrowed. Did someone hurt you? Emily shook her head. Not yet, but if I go through with this wedding, I'll lose myself. Jake looked at her for a long time, not judging, not mocking, just seeing her. Then he stood up slowly, slinging a towel over his shoulder. Okay, he said simply, let's do it. You'll help me? Sure. I've done crazier things for strangers. Besides, you look like someone who needs a win tonight. Emily felt a strange mix of guilt and relief wash over her. This man, this complete stranger, had just agreed to play a role in her personal revolution. They didn't kiss. They didn't even touch. Instead, they sat by the fire until the stars faded, swapping stories, teasing each other, laughing like they had all the time in the world. He told her about surfing in Tahiti. She told him about her worst tour mishap, involving a jellyfish, a tourist from Texas, and an ice cream cone. At some point, Emily forgot why she had come, and by sunrise the plan was in motion. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something else had begun that night, something unexpected, something she hadn't planned. They didn't leave the beach. Not really. Emily and Jake sat close to the fire as the crowd thinned out, the flames crackling low, casting flickers of light on the sand. Around them, couples leaned into each other, the air charged with quiet laughter and stories lost in the wind. But between Emily and Jake, there was something different, a strange stillness. Like they were outside time, she expected awkwardness, regret, second-guessing. But what she got was a man who asked thoughtful questions and waited for the answers. A man who didn't interrupt, didn't glance at his phone, didn't try to fill silences with empty noise. Jake Donovan had kind eyes. That was the first thing Emily noticed as the light shifted and his features became more visible. They weren't the eyes of someone trying to impress her. They were patient, clear, like he wasn't afraid to see her. And more importantly, he wasn't afraid to let her see him. So, he said, stretching his legs out in the sand, on a scale of 1 to 10, how illegal is this plan of yours? She laughed, finally relaxing. I think we're safely in the morally questionable category, but it's for a good cause. He raised an eyebrow. Which is me. Saving myself. Jake nodded slowly, gaze thoughtful. Fair. You strike. Me as someone who doesn't get saved often. Probably always the one doing the saving. That hit her harder than it should have. You don't even know me, she said quietly. No, he agreed. But I've met people who wear that same kind of tired in their shoulders. Emily paused, caught off guard by the accuracy. Her hands gripped the edges of the blanket beneath them, grounding herself. You surf for a living? She asked, trying to change the subject. Jake chuckled. Not really, I wish I work in tech, actually. Surfing's just what keeps me human. You don't seem like a tech guy, he smirked. What do tech guys seem like? Smug, obsessive, addicted to data and buzzwords. Jake laughed out loud, a warm, unguarded sound. You're not wrong, I used to be like that. Then life smacked me around a little and I decided I'd rather chase waves than algorithms. Must be nice, she murmured. What? To be able to walk away from your old life. Jake looked at her, the firelight dancing in his eyes. Sometimes, the only way to save something is to let it crash first. Another silence fell, but this one wasn't awkward. It was full of unsaid things, and it made Emily realize she hadn't felt this calm around someone in a long time. They talked for hours about small things, favorite foods, weird fears, the worst songs they secretly loved. She told him about her first tourist tour when she got lost in her own town. He told her about wiping out in front of pro surfers and pretending it was intentional. And somewhere between the stories and the laughter, the walls between them dissolved. It was never about seduction. No touches, no calculated looks, no pressure. Just presence, honesty, a moment of rebellion that had turned into something unexpectedly gentle. Eventually, the fire died down to glowing embers. Most of the beach was empty now. The tide had crept closer, the sound of the waves louder in the silence. Emily yawned, rubbing her eyes. We should probably make it believable. Jake glanced at her. You want to stay out here until someone sees us together at sunrise? She nodded. If people believe we spent the night together, it needs to look like, well, like something happened. He smiled. All right, but no actual scandal, okay? Emily grinned. Scout's honor. He tossed her an extra hoodie from his backpack, and they stretched out side by side on the sand, backs on the blanket, eyes to the stars. Tell me something no one else knows about you, she said after. A long pause. Jake turned his head toward her. I used to be afraid of water. No way. Serious. Couldn't even take a bath without panicking as a kid. Took years to trust the ocean. Emily smiled. And now you surf. Every day. Why? Jake exhaled. Because the ocean doesn't care who I was, only who I am now. That silence again. Not heavy, just full. Emily felt her heart ache, in a strange, sweet way. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to find a random guy, create a scandal and move on, not feel seen, not feel safe, not feel anything. But Jake Donovan wasn't following the script, and neither was she. As dawn crept over the horizon, the sky blushed in soft oranges and sleepy blues. Emily sat up, brushing sand from her arms. Time to sell the lie, she said. Jake sat up beside her, raking a hand through his messy hair. You okay? She nodded. Better than I've been in months. They walked toward the edge of the beach together, not touching, not speaking, just moving in step. When they reached the road, Jake paused. I'll go left. You go right, he said. But if anyone asks... You were incredible, she finished, smirking. He laughed. Unforgettable. She watched him walk away, hoodie sleeves pushed, ARP surfboard under one arm, just a guy who'd agreed to be her chaos for the night, except now she wasn't sure if it was all pretend, and that terrified her more than anything else. By the time the sun had fully risen, Emily Carter's world was already changing, and not quietly. She hadn't even made it home when her phone started vibrating. The first message came from Lucy, of course. Lucy. Gee. We started a wildfire. It's everywhere. Everyone saw you leave the beach with him. Bradley's mom asked me if you were on drugs. Emily winced, then laughed. It was happening. The lie she carefully planted was already growing like ivy through every corner of Ocean View Bay. She walked home barefoot, carrying her sandals in one hand and Jake's oversized hoodie draped over her shoulders. The smell of salt still clung to her skin, and her heart felt like a balloon half full of adrenaline and something dangerously close to freedom. This was exactly what she wanted. Right? By noon, the town had exploded. Ocean View Bay was the kind of place where the seagulls knew your secrets, and the baristas had opinions about your dating life. A girl like Emily, local sweetheart, tour guide, potential bride of the richest heir in town, didn't just vanish overnight with a mystery man without setting off fireworks. At the Salty Bean, the local cafe, a group of retirees sat around, a corner table whispering excitedly between bites of lemon scones. She was wearing his hoodie, Margaret. I heard they slept on the sand. On the sand. Like some kind of coastal scandal. Meanwhile, on Ocean View Online, the town's unofficial gossip page, the posts had already begun. Emily Carter seen walking barefoot at sunrise with unknown man, not Bradley. Discuss. Did our golden girl go rogue? And is the wedding still on? He's not even from here. He had a tattoo. Emily sat on her bed staring at her phone, each ping more ridiculous than the last. Lucy kept her updated in real time. Lucy. Bradley just showed up at the marina with the angriest yacht posture. I've ever seen, Lucy. I told Karen from the bakery that your chakras were misaligned and only a stranger's touch could fix it. Lucy, we're legends. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Emily felt a strange hollowness settle inside her, because people weren't just whispering. They were judging, laughing, rewriting her story without permission. What had started as a carefully planned escape was mutating into a soap opera she couldn't control. And worst of all, Jake was gone. No trace, no text, no playful follow-up. Just vanished like a wave retreating after the tide. She didn't know why. She expected anything different. They'd made no promises, no plans. He had helped her, nothing more. Still, she stared at her phone more times than she cared to admit. Her mother arrived later that afternoon, carrying a bag of groceries and the look of a woman who had seen every rumor and wanted answers. "Emily," Linda began, her voice calm but sharp, "we need to talk." Emily braced herself. "I know you're feeling pressured, and I know Bradley isn't perfect. But whatever this stunt was, it's gone too far. People are talking. I know. You're ruining your own chances, sweetheart." "I'm saving myself," Emily said softly. Linda sighed, setting down a bag of apples with unnecessary force. "Do you love him, this surfer boy?" "I don't even know him." Linda's brows shot up. "Then why?" "Because he didn't look at me like I was property." That silenced the room. Emily turned away, not trusting her voice. Outside the window, seagulls circled lazily above the boardwalk. Tourists pointed. Gerd brochures she'd once written with excitement. The life she loved was still there, but she wasn't sure where she belonged in it anymore. Later that evening, Bradley arrived. No text, no call. Just walked right in like he always did, as if every room naturally belonged to him. He wore a tailored navy shirt, his hair too perfect, his smile strained. "We need to talk," he said, standing with arms crossed in the foyer like he was negotiating a business deal. Emily sat on the couch, barefoot, arms folded. "I'm listening." "I don't care what people are saying. We can move past this. I'll hire a PR firm, say you were kidnapped or had a breakdown. Whatever works." "I wasn't kidnapped," she said calmly. "And I definitely wasn't." "Broken? You were with someone else?" She nodded, his jaw clenched. "You slept with him." "Does it matter?" He didn't answer, just stared at her like she'd cracked something sacred. "Emily," he said, voice low, "we had a future." "No, you had a plan. I just happened to fit inside it." Silence stretched between them like a tight wire. Bradley stepped back. "You're making a mistake." "I hope so," she said, "because at least it'll be mine." He left without another word, and just like that the engagement was over. The whispers would get louder now. The scandal would deepen. But Emily didn't feel shame. She felt like herself again. Still, something tugged at her, because for all the noise around her, the gossip, the relief, the mess, one question kept echoing louder than the rest. Where was Jake? The morning after the blowout with Bradley, the house was too quiet. Emily stood barefoot in the kitchen, staring at the kettle that had been boiling for nearly 3 minutes without her noticing. The steam coiled into the air like a warning. She hadn't read in time. Her hands shook slightly as she reached to turn off the stove, the silence in the room screaming louder than any argument. Linda Carter entered moments later, dressed in her usual perfection, crisp blouse, pearl, earrings, hair pinned back in a no-nonsense twist that had probably never known humidity or chaos, but her eyes were tired, rimmed with red. She carried a folder and a face that said she had already rewritten the story in her mind, one where her daughter made the wrong choice and she had to fix it. "I spoke with the Whitmores," Linda said without preamble, Bradley stepping away from the arrangement officially. Emily didn't respond right away. She poured the hot water over a bag of chamomile tea, watching the herbs darken the liquid like spilled ink. "You're welcome," she said finally, without turning around. Linda exhaled slowly. "This isn't about gratitude. No, it's about control. And about money. It's about stability, Emily, about family, about the business your father built with his own hands. Emily turned then, eyes flashing. Don't you dare bring Dad into this. He built that company with storytelling. He didn't sell me like a solution. Linda's face hardened. No one sold you, but sometimes, Emily, in life we have to make sacrifices. And sometimes, Emily cut in, her voice rising, those sacrifices are our souls. The silence stretched long between them, filled with all the things they'd never said. The unspoken resentments, the disappointments, the fear of losing everything. But for once, Emily didn't step back. She didn't apologize or soften her edges. She stood in her truth. I know you're scared, she said, quieter now. But so am I. And I'd rather be scared and free than owned and safe. Linda didn't speak. She simply sat down at the kitchen table, the folder falling limp in her hands. I'm sorry it has to be this way, she said softly. Emily poured her tea and walked out of the room without another word. Outside, the town was buzzing. Every glance she received on the boardwalk came with a question behind it. Did she really sleep with him? Is the wedding off? Who is he anyway? The cafe didn't offer her a free muffin that morning. The florist didn't wave from across the street. For the first time in years, Emily Carter felt like an outsider in her own home. And oddly enough, that brought her peace. Until that evening. Lucy called just as the sun dipped into the horizon, her voice breathless. Em, you need to come to your mum's house now. Why? She has a guest, a potential investor. So, let her pitch the business to someone else. That's what she wanted, right? Lucy hesitated, then whispered, It's him. Emily froze. Who? The guy from the beach. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Jake? Jake. Donovan. Or should I say Jacob Donovan Caldwell? Emily nearly dropped her phone. She drove to her mother's house in a daze, her mind spinning faster than her wheels. The man who sat by the fire with her, who joked about tattoos and surfing, and fear of water, was Jacob Caldwell. As in Caldwell Tech? As in one of Bradley Whitmore's former partners and competitors? The man who helped her fake a scandal was a billionaire in disguise. By the time she arrived, her mother was already in hostess mode. Wine glasses polished, candles lit, cheese cubes arranged with surgical precision. Emily, Linda said smoothly, you remember Mr. Caldwell? Jacob, stood from the armchair, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt, his expression unreadable. Nice to see you again, he said, voice calm, eyes searching hers. Emily blinked. You're an investor? Jake gave a small nod. I was testing a new app, anonymous tourism, real-time cultural immersion. Ocean View Bay was one of the pilot towns. I didn't expect to get this immersed. Linda, oblivious to the emotional hurricane in the room, clapped her hands once. And isn't it wonderful? I've invited him to stay a few days. We can talk business, maybe brainstorm, ways to integrate his tech with our tours. Emily couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Jake looked at her with something between apology and vulnerability. Can we talk? Emily turned without a word and walked outside to the porch, her hands shaking. Moments later, he followed. I didn't lie, he said softly. I just didn't tell you everything. You let me use you to destroy a public engagement, she snapped, spinning to face him. You helped me ruin my name. Jake's jaw clenched. You said you needed help. I helped. You're a CEO, Jake. You're a tech billionaire. You knew exactly what this would do, to me, to this town. I knew what it would do to him, Jake said, Bradley. And maybe part of me wanted that, but I didn't expect you. Silence. Ocean View Bay glowed in the distance. Boats bobbed lazily at the docks. Somewhere far off, a child laughed. Emily's voice broke. So what now? Jake looked at her, really looked. I'm staying, for now, if you'll let me. She stared at him, heart pounding. The man she thought was a stranger had just become the most complicated part of her story, and she didn't know whether to run or reach for his hand. The next morning, Emily was brushing her teeth when she heard voices downstairs. Loud, decisive, familiar. She froze mid-rinse. That was her mother's voice. And Jake's. She spit into the sink, wiped her face, and rushed downstairs in mismatched, pajamas and a sweatshirt that still smelled faintly like ocean salt and firewood, the one Jake had given her. She didn't expect a guest. She definitely didn't expect what came next. Linda stood in the foyer, absolutely beaming. Jacob Donovan Caldwell, apparently, was standing beside her, holding a leather duffel bag. Emily blinked. "What is happening?" Linda clapped her hands together like a game show host announcing a prize. "Isn't it wonderful? Jake's going to stay with us for a few days. He wants to understand our business better. Real immersion, get a sense of the day-to-day, like he did with the tours." Emily's eyes snapped to Jake, who was clearly trying to look neutral. "You're staying here?" He nodded. "If it's okay with you." She nearly choked on air. "That's not the question I think you should be asking." Jake lifted his eyebrows. "Is it not?" Linda, mistaking tension for hospitality, practically skipped to the kitchen. "I've already set up the guest room. Fresh sheets, Wi-Fi password on the dresser, view of the ocean, perfect for collaboration." Emily crossed her arms, heart racing. "Collaboration?" Linda poked her head back out. "I'm going to the market. Try not to kill each other." And with that, she was gone. Emily stared at the door, then back at Jake. "You just agreed to live here with me after everything?" Jake placed his bag on the floor with infuriating calm. "I figured it'd be easier to talk without you. Walking out of the room every 5 seconds. Oh, so now it's a strategy?" "No," he said softly. "Now it's an apology in person." Emily wasn't ready for how sincere that sounded, and she definitely wasn't ready for how much that sincerity still pulled at something inside her. "You lied," she said, voice flat. "I didn't lie," he replied. "I just didn't explain who I was. You weren't supposed to know, no one was. That was the whole point of the immersion program. It's how I test our new tech, anonymously at the ground level. It keeps things honest." She scoffed. "Honest? You let me humiliate myself. I helped you do something bold," he said. "And I don't regret that part. I regret not telling you the truth sooner." Emily pressed her fingers to her temple. "And now you're living in my house. Temporarily." They stared at each other in silence, the kind of silence that crackled. Jake finally sighed. "Look, I'll stay out of your way. I'll be respectful. This isn't a stunt. I just want to finish what we started." "Which is what exactly?" "Figuring out whether there's something real underneath. All the pretending." That stunned her into silence, and before she could process it further, Jake picked up his bag and walked down the hallway toward the guest room like he'd always belonged there. The first day was tolerable, tense, quiet, careful. They passed each other like ghosts in a museum, polite nods, short greetings, avoiding eye contact for too long. Emily tried to pretend it didn't bother her. But Jake, despite his silence, managed to invade every corner of her world. He reorganized the kitchen cabinets. He fixed the squeaky step on the staircase that had annoyed her for years. He charmed Linda over morning coffee, suggesting marketing. Ideas that made her mother glow, and worst of all, he was good with people. The same town that had crucified Emily for one scandal was suddenly warming up to the mysterious CEO who helped install a community bulletin app at the boardwalk. The hypocrisy made her want to scream, but not nearly as much as the sound of his laugh echoing through the house. It was deep, warm, easy, the kind that stuck in your head like a melody. One night, while she was curled up in the living room trying to focus on a tourist brochure redesign, Jake walked in barefoot, carrying 2 beers. He held one out. "Truce?" She didn't take it. He sat anyway. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of crickets and waves filling the space. Jake leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You always hated Bradley, didn't you?" Emily smirked. "That obvious? You flinched every time he said your name like it belonged to him." She nodded. "He never asked what I wanted, just assumed it would align with his needs." "And what do you want?" he asked, turning his head to look at her. Emily hesitated. "I want to be free, to build something that feels like mine, to love without owing someone for it." Jake's gaze softened. "That sounds terrifying." "It is," she admitted, "but it's worth it." He nodded, then after a pause added, "I want that too." The silence between them changed again, no longer stiff or awkward, just full of unspoken possibility. They didn't touch. They didn't confess anything, but something shifted in the air, something neither of them could take back. And later, when Emily tried to fall asleep, she kept replaying one simple fact in her mind. He was down the hall, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted him to leave. By the third day, Emily was regretting every life decision that led to Jake Donovan sleeping under her roof, because Jake, despite his charm, despite his unexpected warmth, was infuriating as a roommate. He was tidy. Obsessively tidy. The kind of tidy that didn't just clean up after himself, but rearranged the entire house in the name of optimization. Her kitchen pantry? Reorganized alphabetically. Her living room bookshelves? Resorted by genre then by color. Even her closet had fallen victim to his system. "Jake," she shouted from upstairs, "where are my yoga pants?" "In the stretchwear section," he called back casually. "I don't have a stretchwear section." "You do now," Emily groaned, pulling open drawers like a raccoon in a trash can. When she finally found what she needed, she stormed downstairs barefoot and exasperated. Jake was already in the kitchen, humming, making eggs, and somehow managing to look like a catalogue model in a worn t-shirt and sweats. "I don't need my life optimized," she said, crossing her arms. "You're welcome," he said without turning around. "Also, you left your laptop open last night. You have at least 10 tabs slowing it down. I cleaned them up." Emily's eyes went wide. "You touched my laptop? You were using a default browser, Emily." Her mouth fell open in theatrical horror. "You reorganized my brain," she gasped. He chuckled. "You're being dramatic." "Oh, sweetheart," she said, grabbing a banana from the key counter. "This is just the preview. It wasn't all bad." There were moments when she almost forgot she was supposed to be annoyed, like when they ran into each other brushing their teeth, and she ended up with toothpaste foam on her nose. And he wiped it away without thinking, then blushed like a boy caught staring, or when he offered to help her shoot promotional videos for the tour business and made her laugh so hard she snorted on camera. That videos, of course, went semi-viral in the community group, and someone made a meme of her with the caption, "Queen of the Coast and of Unbothered Snorts." Then there was the nickname war. It started with a label Jake secretly added to her profile on his tourism app Datsun guide name, Emily Queen of the Ronco Carter Special. Skill, sleeping through earthquakes. She retaliated by editing his profile when he wasn't looking. Name, Jake Technarch Donovan. Special skill, organizing spoons by emotional trauma. The prank war escalated quickly. He swapped her shampoo with glitter gel. She replaced his protein powder with powdered milk. He hid a Bluetooth speaker in her closet that moaned every time she opened it. She texted him fake messages from Bradley, offering to reconcile with a yacht. They laughed so hard some nights, they forgot why they were fighting in the first place. But under the surface, beneath the snark, the sass, the soft war of post-its and eye rolls, something was shifting. Emily felt it in the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, in the way he always made sure there was coffee waiting for her in the morning. Exactly the way she liked it. Dark roast, cinnamon, oat milk. In the way he defended her when a tourist complained about her sarcasm during a stormy harbour tour. Jake had cut in smoothly, saying, "If you can't handle honest weather, maybe stick to museums." That night she stared at the ceiling in bed, remembering his voice, remembering the way he smiled like she was the funniest person in the room. She hated how much she liked it. Then came the laundry incident. Emily had just finished hanging her towels outside when she heard Jake yell, "Emily!" She turned to find him standing in the laundry room doorway, holding up a pink shrunken t-shirt, formerly white and adult-sized. "You washed my shirt with red beach towels?" She winced. "Oops. That was my favorite shirt." "You have 11 of the same shirt." He narrowed his eyes. "You don't mess with a man's signature look." "Oh, I messed, and I'm just getting started." He took a slow step toward her. "You wouldn't dare. I would." And I did. They stood there face to face, breath to breath, close enough to count eyelashes. The air snapped tight between them. Neither moved. Then, as if on cue, the washing machine beeped, and they both burst out laughing. Whatever had almost happened evaporated into ridiculousness, but it left something behind, a hum in her chest, a question she was too scared to ask. Later that evening, Emily found a note on her pillow, written in neat, bold handwriting. Dear Queen of the Ronco Laundry Update. Your hoodie is in the dryer. I may have added a lavender sheet. You're welcome. Also, for the record. You're very hard to ignore. The tech narc she didn't know what to do with that, so naturally she retaliated. She left a sticky note on the bathroom mirror. Dear Narc-in-Chief, you snore like a drowning walrus. The Coastal Menace. Jake responded by programming the smart speaker to call her Her Majesty every time she entered the kitchen. She retaliated by changing his alarm ringtone to the sound of goats screaming. And through it all, the tension grew. Their banter became something deeper. The glances lingered longer. The touches became more casual. A hand on the back, a brush of fingers when passing coffee mugs. They weren't enemies, not even friends. They were something electric. Something dangerous. Something one of them would eventually have to name. The boat rocked gently as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of fire. Emily stood near the bow, wind tangling her hair, salt in her lashes, eyes half closed as she let the sea speak in its language again. Rhythm, breath, memory. It had been her idea. Though she didn't fully realize why she suggested it, Jake had been sitting at the kitchen table earlier that morning, sketching app ideas on napkins, and without thinking she said, "You should see the coast from the water. I mean, really." "See it?" He looked up and smiled. "Are you inviting me on a date, Captain Carter?" She'd rolled her eyes. "It's a business field trip." But now out here, miles away from land, with nothing but the sound of waves and seagulls retreating into dusk, Emily knew this wasn't business. This was something else entirely. Jake appeared beside her, hoodie unzipped, sleeves rolled up, salt, spray dotting his forearms. He leaned on the rail, silent for a moment. "I've seen a lot of coastlines," he said quietly, "but this one feels personal." Emily glanced at him, her voice soft. "It is." They stood there, side by side, watching the sky change color like a slow confession. The boat moved in steady rhythm, as if carrying them into a different world, one with no gossip, no expectations, no pressure to perform, just breath. Just presence. "You're quieter than usual," she murmured. Jake shrugged. "I think I'm scared." She turned. "Of the ocean?" He smiled faintly. "Of messing this up?" Emily's chest tightened. "There's nothing to mess up. We're not." Jake looked at her then, really looked. "You keep saying we're nothing, but I don't feel like nothing." She didn't know what to say, so she looked away. Later, they anchored in a quiet cove, far from the harbor lights. The boat swayed gently beneath them as Emily spread out a blanket and opened a small cooler. Sandwiches, grapes, and 2 bottles of ginger beer. A simple meal. Honest. They sat cross-legged, laughing about old tour stories. Emily told him about the time a seagull stole a guest's sunglasses. Jake told her about pitching an app while unknowingly bleeding from a coral cut and closing the deal anyway. Their laughter came easy, their silences easier still, after. Eating, Jake pulled off his shirt and dove into the water with a splash. "Seriously," Emily called. "Come on," he yelled from the waves. "You can't give me a tour and not let me experience it." She hesitated at the edge, then stripped off her shorts, wearing a tank top and underwear beneath. She jumped in. The water was colder than expected. They surfaced, gasping and laughing, treading water under the blush of stars. Jake floated on his back. "Tell me something real, Emily." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" "No games, no walls, just something true." Emily swam in slow circles. The water wrapped around her like memory, like honesty. She closed her eyes. "I was going to marry someone I didn't love because I thought it was the only way to save my mom," she said. "And part of me hated myself for even considering it." Jake didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I've built a billion-dollar company, and the loneliest I've ever been was at the top floor of my own headquarters. I'd have traded every dollar for a moment like this." They floated in. Silence after that, the kind that feels like a secret being born. Back on the boat, wrapped in towels, they sat near the bow again, this time closer, shoulders touching, legs almost aligned. Emily's hair dripped down her back and Jake's fingers twitched as if fighting the urge to tuck it behind her ear. "I still don't trust you," she said suddenly. He nodded. "I don't blame you, but I don't want to stop knowing you either." He turned to her. "Then don't." Her breath caught. There was no kiss, not yet. But there was something else, something deeper. His hand, resting lightly over hers, warm, real. And the silence between them. Didn't ask for anything more, not tonight. But the tide was rising and something inevitably was about to change. It was supposed to be just dinner, a simple meal, no pressure, no expectations. Linda had orchestrated the evening with precision. Roasted chicken, candles that smelled faintly of vanilla and ambition, background jazz that played just loud, enough to mask the silence. Emily had barely sat down before her mother handed her a napkin folded into a heart. Jake arrived 10 minutes late. On purpose, probably. He wore a button-down shirt, untucked, slightly wrinkled, like he wanted, to remind them all he wasn't fully one of them. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he looked nervous in a way that Emily wasn't used to seeing. Dinner was fine, too fine. They talked about tourists, the weather, how the Caldwell app was expanding into mountain towns. Linda beamed like a mother at prom. Emily felt like she was sitting inside a scripted scene someone else had written for her. And then came dessert. And then came the moment. Linda cleared her throat, her smile dangerously sweet. "Well," she said, "now that we've all had our fill, I think it's time to talk about where this is going." Emily froze. Jake glanced at her. Linda continued. "You two obviously have chemistry. Everyone in town is already invested in this story. I think if we're all honest, we'd agree that this match makes sense." Emily's stomach clenched. Jake's jaw tightened. Linda leaned forward. "You're both adults. You care for each other. What are we waiting for, a proposal?" Emily stood so quickly her chair screeched backward. Jake stood too, but slower, calmer. "Linda," he said gently, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but—" Emily cut him off. "No." Linda blinked. "No. No," Emily repeated, her voice shaking. "You don't get to push me into this. Not again. Not even if it looks perfect." Jake watched her carefully, his hands loose at his sides. "I'm not ready," she said, her breath uneven. "I don't care if the town wants it. I don't care if you think it would fix everything. I need space to figure out who I am when I'm not being chosen for convenience." Linda's face crumbled. "Emily!" But Emily was already walking away, out the front door, into the night air. Jake found her an hour later, sitting on a bench near the harbor, legs tucked under her, staring at the lights reflecting on the water. He sat beside her without saying anything for a full minute. Then softly, "I didn't plan that." "I know. She means well. She means control." He sighed. "Fair." They sat in silence again, the kind that knew too much. "I care about you," Jake said. Emily closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I think about you when you're not around. I listen for your footsteps in the hallway. I wake up wondering if you've had coffee. Don't," she said gently, "please." Jake turned his body toward her. "Why not?" "Because if you say it, I'll believe you. And if I believe you, I'll fall. And if I fall, I'll lose myself again." Jake stared at her, his heart in his throat. "I'm not Bradley," he said. "I know," she repeated, "but you're still everyone else right now." That landed heavy between them. "I don't want to be." "Saved," she said, voice shaking. "I want to choose." Jake nodded slowly. "Then I'll wait." Emily looked at him, surprised. "I'll wait," he said again, "as long as it takes. Just don't push me away completely." "I don't want to," she said, "but I might." Jake smiled sadly. "That's the risk I'm willing to take." He reached out, gently, brushed her hair behind her ear, and left. No kiss, no promises. Just a man who was learning to let someone breathe, and a woman who wasn't ready to be caught. Not yet, but maybe, someday. She packed at dawn. No warning, no ceremony. Just silence and a suitcase. Emily folded her favorite sundress, the one with faded hibiscus prints and a coffee stain no one ever noticed. She packed sandals, her camera, and a single worn-out guidebook. She'd bought in high school about the Hawaiian Islands, a dream she used to whisper about when things got too hard. Back then, the ocean felt like escape. Now, it felt like memory. Linda didn't try to stop her. Maybe she understood this time. Maybe she knew that what Emily needed wasn't another lecture, but space. Jake, however, didn't know, and that was the point. The airport was quiet, the kind of quiet that buzzed under fluorescent lights and echoed off sterile floors. Emily stood, in line, passport tucked under her arm, earbuds in, the sounds of crashing waves playing in her ears, not music, just the ocean. A comfort loop. She kept her head down, heart heavy. The gate number blinked on the screen above her. Flight 172, Honolulu. She could almost taste the air. Pineapple, sea salt, coconut oil, freedom. But also regret. Because no matter how far she flew, part of her would remain in ocean view. Bay, in that stupid yellow house, in that kitchen where Jake made her laugh while chopping onions, in that boat where he asked her for something real. She hated how much she missed him already. But missing someone wasn't the same as being ready for them. Right? The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. Emily stood up, fingers tight. Around the handle of her suitcase, she walked slowly toward the gate, every step louder in her chest. She didn't hear the shouting at first. Then she did. Her name, over and over again. Emily. She turned, and for a second thought she was hallucinating. Because there he was, soaking wet, barefoot, carrying a surfboard under one arm and dodging security with a wild look in his eyes. Jake Donovan, sprinting through the terminal like a madman. People stared. A child clapped. Someone dropped a smoothie. Jake didn't care. He stopped a few feet in front of her, completely out of breath, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes locked on hers. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked, breathless. "I couldn't let you leave," he said. "Not without trying. Not without telling you. Jake, I love you." The words dropped like thunder. He stepped closer, lowering the board, letting it fall to the floor, with a wet thud. "I love the way you laugh when you're trying not to. I love how you take up space and don't apologize for it. I love that you challenge me, scare me, make me want to be better, without even trying. I don't care if it's too soon or too messy or too imperfect." She blinked, stunned. "But you said—" "I said I'd wait, and I will, but I needed you to know. Before you go chase freedom, I needed you to know that I see you, all of you, and I'm not afraid." Her throat tightened. "I was trying to protect myself." "I know," he whispered. "But sometimes, love is the parachute." Emily's chest cracked open like a wave splitting on rocks, and suddenly she was laughing, through tears, laughing so hard that people at the gate stared harder. Jake looked worried. "Are you okay?" She dropped her suitcase, stepped forward, and kissed him. It wasn't delicate, it wasn't planned. It was crashing tides, bottled up longing and gratitude for second chances. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and blinking, she said, "You're insane. You started it. I was leaving. And I caught you," she exhaled. "So, what now?" Jake smiled. "I hear Ocean View's looking for a new kind of tour guide, one who tells the truth." Emily glanced at the gate, then back at him. She didn't need paradise. She just needed real. They left the airport hand in hand, barefoot and laughing, leaving behind a cancelled flight, a startled crowd, and a life they both no longer needed. But outside that sliding door, everything was about to begin. It wasn't the wedding Linda Carter had dreamed of. There was no string quartet, no custom invitations, no floral arches flown in from Napa. There wasn't even a seating chart or a guest list. But what there was magic. Emily stood on the sand, barefoot, wearing a flowy white dress that looked suspiciously like a beach cover-up layered over cut-off denim shorts. Her hair was a mess of sea wind and flowers Jake had picked himself from the dunes. He, in turn, wore flip-flops and a Slightly wrinkled linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up, still damp from the ocean. Their officiant, a retired tourboat captain named Rudy, who'd once gotten stuck in a paddleboard during a bachelor party. The guests, a bunch of curious tourists, a group of local fishermen who brought beers instead of gifts, two giggling kids who served as flower bearers with seashells in their pockets, and Lucy, holding a Bluetooth speaker blasting soft ukulele music as she cried behind her oversized sunglasses, and Bradley. He showed up late, holding a six-pack and wearing sunglasses too expensive. For the vibe, he gave Jake a mock salute, muttered, "You win," and sat cross-legged in the sand with a grin that suggested he finally got the joke. Emily couldn't stop smiling. This was never the plan. But maybe that was the point. When Rudy asked for vows, Jake looked at Emily and didn't read from a paper. "I thought love was something you measured in milestones, careers, houses, bank accounts. But then I met you. And suddenly love felt like laughter I didn't expect, like a sunrise I didn't plan to catch, like choosing someone every day even when you could choose easy." Emily bit her lip, eyes shining. "My life used to be clean, precise, controlled. Then you came in with sand in your hair, stubbornness in your voice, and stories that made me want to stay longer. You didn't fit into my world, you reshaped it, and I'm never going back." Emily looked at him for a long time before speaking. "I used to think love meant losing myself, that being chosen meant being changed, silenced, made smaller." She reached for his hand. "But you never asked me to be anything but me. Even when I was messy, even when I pushed you away, you waited, you stayed. And now I finally believe real love doesn't erase you. It amplifies you." They didn't say "I do." They just kissed, and the ocean roared behind them like it approved. The celebration that followed was part beach picnic, part chaotic family reunion. Lucy brought tacos from a nearby food truck. Jake's old tech team joined on a live stream and toasted. With coconut water, Linda danced with Rudy after 2 margaritas. Bradley got sunburned and lost a flip-flop in the waves. Someone lit sparklers before the sun even set. And when the stars finally arrived, Emily and Jake sat side by side on the sand, their fingers tangled, watching the tide come in like a promise. No private jets, no designer gowns, no plans, just them. Messy, glorious, true. Years later, Ocean View Bay would still talk about that wedding, the day the girl who escaped a billionaire married another one, barefoot, on her own terms. Emily and Jake eventually opened a tourism startup that combined storytelling with immersive tech, giving voice to locals and authenticity to travelers. They ran it from a beach house with creaky floors and a hammock that broke at least once a month. They had a son, Luke, who wore goggles to bed because he swore he was part dolphin. They fought, they laughed, they made pancakes at midnight. They never quite figured out how to fold fitted sheets, and somehow that became their version of perfect. Love doesn't always arrive dressed in perfection. Sometimes it crashes into your life barefoot, sarcastic, a little late, and completely uninvited. But exactly what your heart had been silently waiting for. Emily thought she needed to escape to be free. Jake thought he needed control to feel safe. But what they found in each other, in the mess, the jokes, the tension, the truth, what wasn't just romance, it was permission to be fully seen, to be chosen without having to change who they are. Because maybe the most powerful kind of love isn't the one that saves you. It's the one that reminds you that you were never lost. What about you? Have you ever had to run away to discover what you really wanted? Or have you ever wondered if you were loved for who you truly are, or for the idea others made of you? If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? Your like helps this channel grow and continue bringing moving stories like this one. Share with someone special. This message might be exactly what that person needed to hear today.